Happy New Year, everyone. The IPF has dropped their new rulebook changes for 2026. So we're going to go through rulebook and break down every single change. So let's get right into it. I have the technical rules pull up here for 2026. All the changes should be highlighted in red for us. So we're going to go from the top of the rulebook down and go through every change. So let's go and find our very first change here for 2026, which is going to be right here. So this one I actually like as a rule change, and probably my favorite rule change for what I've seen is we're looking right here that before it used to be that preliminary nominations were due 60 days out before a championship, and then the final nominations were due 21 days out from a championship. Now they've changed that final nominations from 21 days to 30 days, giving us an extra 9 days to plan. So that's why I like this rule change, is that oftentimes it was like a mad dash from 21 days out for everyone involved, for lifters to understand, what day they're competing it on, what time they're competing, what the flights are, all that stuff. And then also from coaches knowing which sessions their lifters are in and how many people they have to handle in a specific session. And then from the referee aspect as well, trying to get the referee list out schedule of when you're going to be refereeing. So anytime we can move this further out and be able to give everyone more time to plan, I like that. Obviously, there's going to be a certain point where too many days out is just going to be too hard to know if anyone's going to drop out and being able to know your weight class and everything like that. But I like this change from 21 days to 30 days to give everyone involved more time to prepare for the championship. Let's move on down, find our next rule. Here, just a small change. It just says each lifter must receive a participation medal from the meet organizer at international championships. So previously, at some championships, they would give a participation medal or some kind of memento to every lifter, and then the individual lift awards and the overall awards, the team awards, best lifter awards, everything like that. Now they're just making it mandatory for that participation medal. So nothing there that's too crazy. It can be nice as a lifter to spend all that time, money, effort to go to like a world championship or a continental championship to at least get something to remember the championship by. So let's keep going down and find our next rule change. So our next rule change here is going to be under the disqualification. So this rule change is going to be in a couple spots, but here they're just defining under the bench press. Okay, when we go down to the blue infraction card, to the failure to lock out the arms before the start command. So they're just putting it there. You can see right here, already above it, that we have the failure to lock out the arms at the end of the lift. And so now under the blue card, there's also putting it that if the person doesn't have their elbows locked out to start, okay, then obviously we can still give them the rack command or replace if enough referees don't think that they are locked out. But if only one referee thinks they're not locked out to start, the rest do, you give that start command, then you just give a blue infraction card as that referee that thought the elbow wasn't locked out. So again, nothing too big there. Here is the bigger one under the yellow infraction card here for disqualification or bench press. We have this update here when it comes to elbow depth. So the IPF put the elbow depth rule in. Some lifters try to work their way around that elbow depth. They change their technique by sinking the bar a little bit more into their torso to bring their elbows down to proper depth. And then after a press command, pressing up. And when they pressed up, they naturally lifted their torso up a little bit and got a little bit leg drive too. Some people, I guess, did not like that, thought that the lifters were kind of circumventing or cheating the rule. So now we have this update where it says utilizing upper body thrust to initiate upward movement of the bar from the chest. So what they're trying to say, from my understanding of it, is they're trying to get around that where people are sinking the bar into their chest and sinking their chest down to hit elbow depth, and then from there popping their chest up and then pressing up so that they can kind of get the benefit of a big arch and get the benefit of the elbow depth. So I don't think this is worded very well. I heard that they were going to do this rule change. Some referees were saying that basically lifters were getting around this rule of the elected position by changing their shoulder position because they were sinking down and getting their back and their shoulders in contact with the bench and then thrusting up and lifting their shoulder blades off the bench. So they were changing the elected position of their shoulder, and they're saying, hey, that's not allowed. So I think they try to make that clarification here now by saying this kind of heaving or thrusting the bar off the chest or the torso by using the upper body to push the bar up rather than using the arms and your muscles to push the bar up. So that's what they're trying to say. But again, I don't think it's worded very clearly, and it's going to be very subjective as a referee whether the athlete utilized the upper body to thrust the bar, or if maybe there's just some natural movement of pressing and getting some leg drive. So now are we completely taking away leg drive, because any leg drive that maybe shifts the body weight up and onto the shoulders and maybe lifts the rib cage up a little bit, is that going to be considered upper body thrust, or is it going to be something more dramatic that they're going to look at? Or would they also take it in the context of elbow depth? Like if someone is super deep, they have their elbows way below depth, and they're not trying to circumvent that rule by thrusting their body, then maybe the referees don't worry about it. But then for maybe someone who's arching a lot and is very borderline and trying to circumvent the rule, then maybe they apply it harder for those lifters. So I don't know any additional information about any of these rule changes beyond what's listed here. There's no information provided yet. I don't know if there's going to be any breaking down of these rules or definitions or anything like that. So I don't know exactly how they're going to apply this. But again, it seems kind of subjective, and that maybe referees are going to enforce it differently depending on exactly what kind of technique the athlete uses. But it seems to be a way that, like, okay, so lifters were arching, and so they put a rule in to try and counter arching. So lifters now came and countered elbow depth by trying to kind of sink and heave. And now the IPF's kind of coming back and trying to catch them and saying, okay, you can't do this sink and heave method to get around elbow depth. So let's jump down, find our next rule change. So we have a rule change here as far as when it comes to knee sleeves over the long-legged singlet. It just needs to be over the singlet, not under it. So we already knew that. And it is allowed but not mandatory to wear deadlift socks over the long-legged singlet. So if you want to wear the long-legged singlet for deadlift, then you can wear the socks as well to have like double protection, or you don't need to because you already have the protection from the long-legged singlet. So nothing special there with that rule change. Let's continue on. Here's our next rule changes under shoes. So it's saying shoes must be properly fastened, which means that the laces need to be tied, Velcros, straps secured if you have Velcro straps when the lifter's on the platform. So another small change, there are some lifters that maybe wear some shoes where they don't want to tie the laces, or maybe the laces are too short and it's like hard to tie it. And so they kind of just leave it unfastened, and maybe, I guess, the IPF thinks it's a safety issue if they step on their laces while they're squatting or something like that. So they're just saying, hey, you have to have your shoes tied, your Velcro straps tied when you are on the platform. So nothing too big there. Here's another, I wouldn't say a big rule change, but maybe something that you guys want to be aware of, is that now they're saying for knee sleeves, athletes are permitted to receive personal assistance in the application of their knee sleeves. So this has kind of changed over the years as far as what's considered assistance and what's not considered assistance when it comes to putting sleeves on. And it was kind of where no one can help you put the knee sleeves on, but the rule didn't say there was no reason for having the coach help you take it off. You were allowed to do that. And then it was like, well, what can you use as a lifter to put it on? Can you use your long socks? Can you use plastic or lubricants or anything like that? So there's a lot of back and forth. It seems like they kind of just ditched this idea now and said, hey, lifters, you can do whatever you want. You can use your own assistance. You can get assistance from other people to put the knee sleeves on and off, and just do whatever you want. If the sleeves are approved, then you can get whatever size you want and put it on however you want, so that they don't have to worry about monitoring this and enforcing this. So this kind of keeps things alive for lifters that use the very tight, stiff sleeves and really want to get the tightest pair on, that now, hey, you can have your coach help you pull it on and off too if you want to. So personally, I don't like tight knee sleeves. I think they're useless, but hey, if you want to use that, now you have the freedom to do so however you want. Let's continue on. Find our next rule change right here. This is the same thing. IPF rulebook sometimes is redundant, and sometimes the rules are in multiple places. So here again, you can just see how the referees used to be able to reject any knee sleeves that were put on with assistance from another person or method. And now it's just saying, again, you can use personal assistance in the application of knee sleeves. So same rule there. Next thing here under general, we have an interesting rule here where it says necklaces and similar accessories must be properly secured underneath the t-shirt and should not be placed in the mouth at any time when the lifter is approaching or on the platform. So some of us calling this the Russell Orhe rule because he's kind of the one that made this famous. And then a lot of lifters, especially younger lifters, started doing this where they would have their necklace or chain in their mouth while they're lifting. And some referees would tell lifters, I've seen it before, especially at local meets, say, hey, take that piece of jewelry out of your mouth because they think it's dangerous. Like, what if they bite down during a hard lift and break their teeth or whatever? Or what if they swallow it or something like that? What if they bite it and it breaks and falls off and they step on it? So like for safety issues, they're like already telling them. So now they've made an official rule that if you have any sort of necklace or anything like that kind of around your neck and you're hanging it outside of your singlet in your t-shirt, it's not allowed. And if you are placing it in your mouth, it's not allowed. And it's basically kind of like once you pass the technical controller, then when you're approaching the platform and you're on the platform doing the lift, then you can't have it in that thing. So if you have a necklace, you just put it underneath your shirt. And if it shows a little bit here, it's fine, but you can't have it out. So I think it's kind of a stupid rule. I understand that maybe they're trying to like stop it from a safety aspect, but it's never really had any kind of issues. So I don't think it's that kind of big of a deal. Our next rule here is going to be a bigger rule change here when it comes to squat. So it says the lifter shall face the front of platform. That's already, normal. Barbell must be placed horizontally across the chest. Nothing changed there. But now it says at a height no lower than the posterior deltoid level. So that's our first change. And then our next change here, hands, thumbs, and fingers must be completely gripping the bar position in the rack stance and starting position. So first rule change here, at a height no lower than the posterior deltoid level. So now we're bringing back the rule on how low the bar can be on the back. So many, many years ago when I got into powerlifting, they used to have a rule on how far the bar can be down your back. And then I think they just said, hey, it's too subjective to be able to understand where the bar is on the back. Let's just get rid of the rule. And as long as the person's upright, then we don't care where the bar is located. Now they've gone back and changed it. And they said, hey, now you can't have it below the rear deltoid, or in this case, the posterior deltoid level. Okay. So now we have a rule again on how low the bar can be on the back on the squat. Then we have the rule here as far as gripping the bar. So we used to have it where you could have like a thumb over grip and a thumb not touching the bar. They were saying, hey, we consider all the other fingers as fingers, and those fingers need to be wrapped around and gripping the bar, but we don't consider the thumb a finger. The thumb can be hanging off the bar and not touching the bar. Now it's specifically saying the hands, the thumb, and the fingers must be completely gripping the bar. So now again, we have to have the thumb in contact with the bar. And then it's saying while it's in the stands and in the starting position. So you can't have like some kind of illegal grip and unrack the bar and bring it out and then turn it into like a legal grip. You have to have it as a legal grip the entire time. Now, with these rules, again, it's subjective and we maybe need some more clarification because it's saying at a height no lower than the posterior deltoid level. But what part of the posterior delt or the rear delt are we talking? Are we talking about the top, where we kind of like sit it as a shelf for normal low bar? What if we have it like directly across the center of the muscle belly? And what if we have it like just below, but like in contact? If it's physically contacting, a portion of the rear delt, but it's sitting on the lower part of it, then does that count as well? And then how, as a referee, are we going to be able to see this like through a t-shirt and through a singlet? And oftentimes the side referees on squat and IPF meets are biased towards the front. So now we're from a 45 front angle as a side referee and a direct front angle as a chief referee, supposed to see where the bar is on the back side of the person. Or are now side referees going to shift more to a bias of being behind the lifter to be able to see this? But then oftentimes depth looks higher from that behind position. So it becomes very subjective of where exactly on the rear deltoid does the bar need to be and how much in contact does it need to be? Does it just barely need to be touching? And then also, where are the referees going to be able to sit and actually be able to use their x-ray vision or whatever to be able to see where the bar is through the shirt, through the singlet, in contact with the muscle? And then we probably need some clarification here as far as the thumbs completely gripping the bar. What do they mean by completely gripping the bar? Does that just mean that the thumb needs to be in contact with the bar? Or does that mean it needs to be wrapped around like in the bench press and we can't use a thumb over or suicide grip? So in the bench press, we can't use this suicide thumbless grip. Can we use this in the squat if the thumb is still in contact with the bar, or are they considering that not completely gripping the bar and we must have it around? So these are going to be potentially some big changes that are going to change the way people do low bar squats. So I say like it's killing basically the French low bar squat, because so many French lifters were using this very low bar position and more of a leaned over position. And so now they're going to have to shift the bar back up. And also this can really hurt maybe people that have mobility issues and maybe can't get their thumbs around, and maybe use like a max wide grip and thumbs over, thumbs not touching, kind of like twisted out. Now if they have to get the thumbs around, that can lead to some changes there when it comes to those lifters as well. So we're going to have some lifters affected quite a bit by these two rules, and how exactly they're implemented and how strict they are implemented. So let's continue on. This is a silly rule. This was in the rule book. It was removed from the rule book a number of years ago. It was put back in the rule book, and I was told it was accidentally pulled back in the rule book, put back in the rule book, and it was going to be taken out. But here it is. The lifter is not allowed to walk out through the front of the rack after the completion of the lift for the squat. So what this means, after you finish your squat, you get the rack command, you rack it. You can't walk out the front towards the chief referee. You have to walk back towards the back spotter. And for some people, this just feels better walking forward. I know for me, sometimes when I've had tightness in the shoulders and elbows and wrists, it was easier for me to like let go of the bar and release the stress by walking forward out of the power rack rather than walking back. So for some lifters, it just feels better for them to do that. But also, it's a way for lifters to then, I feel like, to show their excitement and emotion after a lift. So by coming through the front of the platform, now they're in view of the audience. And so now the lifter can show their personality. They can show their emotions of when it's a good lift, when they broke a record or something like that, to the audience. The audience can see them, and then it's better for the sport, because now the audience relates more to the lifter. They like those kind of lifters that kind of maybe get excited and have some kind of celebration after a major lift. And also for like the media team and stuff like that, they're usually there in the front, and they can take good photos and videos of the athlete coming through the front and celebrating. When the athlete goes through the back, then all of a sudden they're surrounded by 3 to 5 spotters that are loading the weight and everything like that. So now you have the rack in the way, the bar and the weights in the way, the spars in the way, and you can't see the lifter when they're looking at the referee lights to see if they got a good lift or not and to celebrate. So it kind of takes that away. So I think it's a silly rule. I don't know why they did it. There's not a safety issue there. I don't think it necessarily gets in the way of the spotters, because by coming back out of the rack, you're kind of getting in the way of the back spotter anyways, trying to come over to change the rack heights or hold the bar. And by going forward, sometimes you get in the way of the spotters anyways, trying to come and change the rack height. So with quick spotters and loaders, they're immediately coming to the rack and the weights to change. No matter which direction a lifter goes, they're going to be running into spotters, into referees, into the media team and the cameras. So it's a tight location on the platform after a lift regardless. So I don't know why they did it. I think it's silly. I think it hurts a little bit promoting the sport, because now it's going to be harder for lifters and the audience to be able to see each other and communicate a little bit during the competition. And I think it's going to be harder now for the media to maybe capture cool moments that they can use to promote the sport. But we shall move on. So now for the bench press, this is a rule that I saw was put back in, and I was told that they were going to keep it in. So this is that the lifter is not allowed to enter the rack from the head side of the bench press rack. So when you're going in to set up for your bench press, you have to come from the technical controller to the platform and just come from the back end, rather than walking around to the front where the chief referee is and the liftoff person and coming in through there. Again, I think it's a silly rule. Someone would told me, hey, it's a safety issue. I don't understand what the safety issue is. You are walking past the liftoff person. You may not even want a liftoff person, so maybe they won't even be there. The bar is sitting in the rack, so it's not like you're doing anything that's like going to cause the bar to fall or whatever. Some people just like going in that way, just as a way as they like to setting up. They like to see maybe where they're gripping the bar and stuff like that. So again, it kind of maybe doesn't affect people as much as the squat, where it may be easy to just go in the other way, and it doesn't affect the celebration and the media team and that kind of stuff like that. But again, I think it's just a silly rule that you have to go in that way, and why can't we go in whatever way we want to when it has no effect on anyone else? Next thing here, when it comes to the bench press, we have hands, thumbs, and fingers must completely grip the bar position in the rack stands with the thumb around grip. I don't think there's anything that was changed that we always had to have the thumb around grip. Maybe the only difference here is that they're saying the bar is positioned in the rack stands. So maybe they're saying like while you're setting up before you take the bar out of the rack, you must have a proper grip, that maybe you can't have some kind of illegal grip and then change it once you take the bar out of the rack and maybe like move your hands a little bit during. But I don't see anything else as far as this being anything different. Maybe they're just trying to clarify what has already been the rule. So we'll continue on. Everything here is the same as far as the elbow depth. So here's our next thing. Oh, this is the same thing. So again, that disqualification as far as utilizing upper body thrust, same rule change that we went over earlier. Here for the deadlift, on completion of the lift, the knees shall be locked in a straight position. Nothing has changed there. Here's where we're getting maybe some clarification. The front bundle of the deltoid muscle should be placed behind the imaginary projection of the bar, and we're going to have a picture below. And so I don't know why they use the front bundle, but they're basically trying to clarify lockout and having the shoulders back. So let's drop down to the picture real quick to see that, which is right here. Okay, so what they're trying to show is here is the bar lockout, and here's the vertical plane of the bar lockout B. So the shoulders, the front delt or anterior delt, or they're calling the front bundle of the shoulder, must be behind this line B. So point A must be behind line B. So what they're trying to clarify is when they said shoulders must be back, this is a question I always had. Well, what does shoulders mean back? Do they mean the shoulders back in the socket? Like, do I need to have the shoulders back or forward in the socket, or the shoulders back or forward in space? Okay, because I could be leaned forward, but have my shoulders back in the socket with my shoulder blades squeezed and my shoulders are back, even though my torso is leaned forward. Or I can have my torso leaned back, but my shoulders rounded forward. And so we have this issue where sometimes lifters, especially if they use like a hook grip, would maybe round their shoulders forward more. And so even though they're leaned back in space, their torso's leaned back, their shoulders are round forward. Or you might have someone who's like upright or maybe just slightly lean forward, but then they pull their shoulder blades back, and so they're getting their shoulders back in the socket. So what do they mean by shoulders back? So now we're kind of clarifying it here that we do need to have the shoulders back in space. So we can't have a position where the shoulders are in front of the bar, so this vertical plane here. So that's what they're trying to explain here. Again, it's weirdly worded here: schematic representation of the correct shoulders abduction in the final position of the deadlift. It makes no sense. And then here we're seeing point A is the front part of the shoulder, point B is the bar, and then the red line is the imaginary projection of the bar, and then this alpha here is the deflection angle. I don't think you really need to look at the deflection angle. You can just say, hey, is point A behind point B in space or not? Kind of like, again, like squat depth. Is point A lower, or in this case, behind point B? And so we're looking at the front part of the front delt, and then we're looking at the bar. So that is what this is saying right here to try and clarify the shoulders back for the deadlift. Then we have another silly rule, and that is here: once the bar has been lowered again on the platform, the lifter is not allowed to step away over the bar toward the front of the platform. So similar to like the squat where you can't walk out the front, in the deadlift when you put the bar down, you can't step over the bar and toward the front of the platform. So again, I think this is silly. This is not a safety issue. You know, the spars are going to be loading the weight anyways. If you're walking back, you're getting in the way of the person bringing the deadlift jack anyways. So I don't think there's any kind of issue. But what this limits again is the ability for you as an athlete to walk forward closer to the audience and interact with the audience to make the competition better and to bring out your personality when you celebrate a big lift. You just won the world title. You can't go out there and celebrate with the audience and basically make a better connection with your audience to promote the sport. And also maybe make it harder again for the media team, because now you're not walking forward towards the media team and facing forward where they can take all kinds of photos and videos of you celebrating everything. Now you have to like turn around and walk the other way, and they're trying to take photos of your back of your head as you're walking off to go and celebrate with your coach. So I think it hurts the sport a little bit in that aspect and gives you no benefits, because it's not any kind of safety issue or logistical issue, you already have the 30-second rule of when you need to be off the platform. And so you should give the athlete those 30 seconds if they want to celebrate the way they want, show their emotions the way they want, interact with their fans and the audience to make the point of being there at a competition more beneficial, and also allowing the media team to do what they do best to promote our sport. Okay, so let's continue on here. When it comes to weighing in, just some small stuff here in wording, and so there's nothing there. But what we have here is something that sometimes has already been done at some local meets because it's not as big of a deal, is that athletes may be permitted to weigh in wearing minimal clothing beyond the standard requirements. For example, they're lifting singlet and t-shirts. Okay, so, and we'll continue on, but barefoot, provided that the integrity and accuracy of the weigh-in process are maintained and the weight of the additional clothing does not define the change of the body weight category. If a question exists regarding the weight of the clothing, a reweigh in the lifter singlet may be requested. Okay, and in competitions with both sexes are competitors, the weigh-in procedure must be altered to ensure lifters are weighed by officials of their own sex. So what this means is that what the rule used to be is that the most amount of clothing that you can wear is your underwear and your socks, and then the least amount of clothing that you could wear was you just going completely nude. Okay, but what if you aren't on the limit of the weight class? You know, you're competing in the 83s, but you weigh 78, 79. Do I really need to go all the way down to my underwear? Why can't I just wear my t-shirt and short and weigh in? So sometimes at local meets, referees were more lenient and just like let lifters weigh in their t-shirt or even in their single, whatever. And it's like, okay, it's not really getting any kind of advantage. We're kind of keeping the process more efficient to getting them in and out of there. So if they want to do that, they can. So now this is more official in the rule book that we can use it at all championships, that, hey, if an athlete knows they're not on the limit of the weight class, they're not worried about every single gram of their body weight, then you could just come in and weigh in your t-shirt and your singlet and just get the weigh-in done without having to strip all the way down, weigh in, and get dressed again. So I like that rule change there. That gives that ability for the athletes. Okay, this is the same thing we went over at the very beginning as far as the nominations, 30 days out for final nominations. I love it. Could be my favorite rule change as of now, since a lot of the other ones are silly, but we shall continue on. Here's the next one. In competitions where designated international broadcast partners are present, the interval between disciplines can be adjusted. So this is an interesting one. And this kind of, I believe, came about once the IPF started working with television companies like Eurosport, is that when you are on live TV, like on Eurosport, they give you a certain time slot and say, hey, listen, we're going to start live at this time and we're going to end at this time, and that's going to include your award ceremony. So you have to get through that slot. As we know, powerlifting can be a long sport. It can be 4 or 5 hours long, whereas a lot of other sports can maybe be 2 to 3 hours long. So they don't necessarily want to give us that long of a slot, and it can be boring and stuff. So they give us a shorter time slot. And so that's why at some IPF World Championships, you see the prime time session where we have fewer lifters, maybe 8 and 8 for 2 flights. And also what they've been doing sometimes for some of those sessions when they know they're going to be on Eurosport is they cut down the time between disciplines. So normally when it's 2 flights, we do 10 minutes and 10 minutes. Sometimes they had cut it down to 5 minutes and 5 minutes to stay on pace of being able to finish on time. So now basically they put it in there that the IPF can kind of just do whatever they want when it comes to the intervals between disciplines if they're going to be on broadcast television. So if they get a specific time slot, then they'll have to adjust accordingly. So it's an interesting rule change. It depends on when they're going to inform the lifters and coaches as well as far as when those breaks are. Hopefully they'll let them know in advance, like when the final schedule goes out after final nominations, they designate which sessions are on TV and say, hey, we're going to do 5-minute breaks, we're going to do 0-minute breaks or whatever, or even the other way, if they're going to do 30-minute breaks because they have to slow down for some reason, then they'll let them know, rather than waiting until like after weigh-ins and you're starting to warm up and say, hey, by the way, we're doing 0-minute breaks between disciplines, so be ready to go for a faster competition. So again, the sooner we can prepare and let everyone know, then the athletes and coaches can be ready for that. They can adjust their training if they want to be ready for faster competitions rather than trying to drop in on them last minute. So interesting rule change. Don't know how much it will change already compared to what they've done, but hopefully they'll let us know in advance when they are making those changes. So we shall continue on. Here's the next rule. Athletes' hair should be fixed, braided, or tied back in such a way as to not interfere with the referee's ability to judge the lift. So interesting rule change here. I don't know how many people are affected by this rule or if anyone's actually trying to use this rule to their advantage. But what I think maybe they're trying to say is like, well, what if someone has long enough hair and they let it hang out that when they're squatting, their hair is covering their hip crease and you can't see proper depth, okay? Or what if someone has hair, same thing in the bench press already, we have to have it tied, but maybe they still have it in a way where they're trying to block elbow depth or something like that if their hair is coming out further to the sides. Or on deadlift, maybe if the hair is over the shoulders and you can't see whether the shoulders are back. So these seems like very rare extreme cases that maybe lifters have to change their hair. Now I don't know, again, is the TC going to be on top of this stuff and tell people like how are they going to be able to assess properly, hey, your hair may cover your shoulders in the deadlift when they haven't been watching the person deadlift. So interesting rule. I don't know how many people it's going to affect and how well they're going to implement this. But if you are someone who has longer hair and maybe you've noticed that when you train it can be harder to maybe see squat depth or elbow depth on bench press or deadlift lockout or something like that because your hair is in the way, then you want to be aware of that and maybe make adjustments in competitions. Next thing, silly rule. Lifters are expected to enter and exit the lifting area or platform in a respectful manner, refraining from discarding the belt on the floor or engaging in any conduct that may be harmful to the integrity of the sport. And so why I don't like this is it kind of takes, again, the personality potentially out of the sport from the athletes, can take some of the fun out for the athletes. And again, it can be subjective of what the referees or the TC or the jury, I don't know who's deciding in this for this rule, what is considered respectful manner and what is considered harmful to the integrity of the sport. So what I mean by this is, hey, if someone, they're saying discard their belt, but maybe someone just drops their belt or throws their belt because they just won a world title and they're very emotional and they want to celebrate, then is that really harmful to the integrity of the sport? Is it really disrespectful? Is it a safety issue? I think no, but is some referee going to get mad about that and say, oh my God, they dropped their belt and they went and they hugged their coach, we're going to take the world title away? Or what's the rule even going to be? Are you going to get kicked out of the meet? Are you going to get your previous lift and no lift? Are you just going to get a warning? Are they going to fine you monetarily? I don't know what the issue here is going to be when it comes to this rule, how they're going to enforce it. And then what if they expand this to other things? So what if the lifter screams, let's go, really loud? Is that considered disrespectful? What if the lifter does a backflip? Like we have some lifters after a big deadlift, they do a backflip. Are they going to say that this is harmful because what if they get injured, or what if they hurt a spotter load, or what if they knock down the banner or something like that? And so it starts becoming an issue of what if some referee just wants to make something out of a lift or whatever and say, oh, that's disrespectful, let's kick him out, whatever. And so it's a gray area of what's considered respectful according to who. Everyone has different cultures and different ideas of what you should be able to do in a powerlifting competition. And I think it's silly as far as discarding the belt on the floor, that if you just take your belt off and you accidentally drop on the floor, or you drop it because you're celebrating, all of a sudden it's going to be an issue. And then what's considered harmful. So again, it takes away people's personality, the differences between people when they celebrate. Okay, someone hits something big and maybe they're more stoic and they just walk off. Someone hits a big lift, maybe they're crying on the platform. Someone hits a big lift, they want to do a backflip, or they want to run over to the crowd and hug their significant other or whatever like that. And so now maybe we're taking all those things away, and everyone has to be robotic. You have to do your lift, put the bar back on the ground, and very stoic walk off the platform, and you could only celebrate maybe in the back where no one can see you. So I think it's silly, and it's a lot of gray area if a referee wants to be annoying about it. And I don't know how it's going to be enforced as far as what the referees or the jury or the TC is going to do. Okay, next thing here, this is something that's already been in place. And so this is just basically when it comes to the jury overturning a lift, it's just saying they may utilize instant replay technology, and basically just explaining that process. So you can go and pause and read all this if you want to, as far as how they're going to do it. But this has already been in place. The first time I saw this was 2017 Classic Worlds in Belarus. That's the first time I saw them have a TV monitor at the jury table, and they watched the replay, and they changed Sean Noriega's lift on their own from a good lift to no lift, and changed who became the world champion. Deuce Gruden became the world champion at that junior world championship. That's the first time I saw this rule in place. So it's already been in place since 2017 Classic Worlds. They just now officially put it in the rule book and maybe defined it a little bit more. So nothing really changed here. Everything is kind of how it's been done. Only thing maybe is that the use of instant replay should not unduly delay the competition and must be conducted in a manner that maintains the flow of the competition. So if the jury stops the competition and make a decision on an attempt before they restart so people can make their changes accordingly, is that they need to be quick. They need to watch the lift live, make a decision, watch the replay real quick, which would take 10 to 15 seconds, discuss it real quick, maybe 30, 60 seconds, make a decision and move on. It shouldn't be where the jury's watching the replay 20 times over and discussing for 10 minutes and slowing down the competition. So we'll continue on. Let's see what other rule changes we have as we come towards the end of the rule book here. So this one, again, small thing, is just as far as at World Championships nominating a maximum referees per nation. They're just upping it from 3 to 4 referees because these championships are getting bigger. We're getting more days, more sessions. It can be a struggle to get enough referees. So they're just upping it where from 3 referees, now you can have a maximum of 4 plus 2 extra referees for jury duties. So now a nation can have, a lot more referees nominated. So the nations that have, maybe more available resources as far as referees, time, money, everything like that, and they can then send more referees to help out in the competition. Then as far as attire for referees, just says open shoes are not allowed. For men, we've always just wear closed-toed dress shoes. I don't know if this then affects women, that you're not allowed to wear any open-toed shoes like heels, even though they may be, formal attire, but nothing big there. And then here, smaller thing again, for those of you that are referees, the qualifications for a Cat 1 referee is now changed. So you must be a Category 2 referee in standing for a period of at least 4 years, which has always been the rule, but now officiating at a minimum of 6 international championships and 6 national championships. So they took out where it used to be where you had to do at least 4 international, and you couldn't just do all bench press. You had to do some powerlifting world championships. Now they've upped the requirements. Now you have to do a minimum of 6 international and 6 national. So this could be good to make it more challenging to become an IPF Category 1 referee, to maybe make it where you have to be at a Category 2 for a longer period of time, getting more experience, and they can assess whether you're a good referee or not at the national, international level before they approve you to become a Category 1. So we don't have everyone just become a Category 1 that maybe don't have as much experience, don't know what they're doing, and then maybe training other people as Category 1s or sitting in the jury and deciding things as Category 1s. So we're making it a little bit more challenging. It would be interesting to see if they would increase the Category 2 as well, so that's not just like national level for at least 2 years. What if we made it where you have to be national for longer, gain more experience before you become an international referee, and then you have to be Category 2 for a longer period of time before you get to the highest level. So it takes a longer time and have to do more competitions to get there. But that's an interesting change there for Category 1 requirements. Let's see if we have anything else as we finish off the rule book here. This is just saying for the championships that a national referee may be appointed as technical controller, which we've already done before. Any body we can kind of get to put in as a technical controller, because we're always short volunteers, is allowed. And so this is kind of just making an official rule. Let's see if there's anything here for the records. Nope, doesn't look like it. And then here, again, like I said, the rulebook can be redundant. And for whatever reason, we've had the rule book where we had all the official rules, and then at the bottom we had, again, it's just a repeat of the rules for classic lifting, like a separate section for classic lifting, even though classic lifting was already listed above. So you can see this is all just removed as far as the classic lifting rules because it's already above. So why just make the rule book longer and repeat everything specifically for this classic lifting session? You can just look at your section above. And then down here is just the coach responsibilities. Looks like nothing has changed there. This was already a rule as far as under no circumstance can any person under the influence of alcohol be in the warm-up room at any time, and this shall be ensured by the head coach. This I've seen in the coach responsibility form already before, and the coaches have to sign off on it, so no change there. So that's the rule book. That is every single change. That is all my thoughts on the rules. Overall, I think a lot of the rules are silly. I think some things are ambiguous and there's some gray areas. We'll see if we get any kind of clarification from the IPF or from the technical committee, either on their website or in emails or at some of the championships. But you would hope that we'd get it sooner because at least here in the US for Powerlifting America, we have our bench press national championship coming up next week. And then we're quickly going to get into international competitions as well, with Sheffield coming up soon. So hopefully we get some clarification going forward. I have my kind of doubts about that, but we'll have to then see how lifters, coaches, and referees all kind of adjust to all these rules going forward into 2026. If you have any questions about the rules, be sure to drop them down below.